that's all we're trying to do is create that win-win situation. Is, you know what, you have the ability to pay on this house, you have the ability to, own it, but you're not out anything that you wouldn't have been otherwise if you would have just bought the home. We have those costs on the tail end of having to sell the home anyways.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, welcome to episode number 6. Excited to be talking about lease options today.
Yeah, lease options is a great topic, and we're glad that you're with us. It's something that I learned about back 20 years ago, and it did make sense when I first heard about it, but after doing it, learning about it, it's a really great strategy.
Awesome. So, I mean, why do you think the lease option is such a fit for people that are signing a lease option agreement with you?
Well, there's a lot of people out there that they have bad credit. Maybe they lost a job. They had some hard times at one time or another, but they're back working again. They've got a family. They want to be in a home. They don't want to be renting. They don't want to be in an apartment. They're business professionals, or they're even some executives. I've done lease options with people that are executives, make great money, but they just fell on some kind of a hard time, lost a job, lost a spouse, whatever ended up happening, and their credit's just not very good. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes they switch jobs and they switch complete industries, and so they can't get qualified for a loan either. And they're moving to another town, moving to Idaho Falls because they switch industries, totally different, but they're still making great money. They can't qualify for a loan. So this is a great option for them to be able to find a house that they like, be able to purchase an option to buy it, and then also rent, so they don't feel like they're throwing their money away.
Yeah, so it gives them the ability or a commitment from the seller or the landlord to say, all right, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and lease this property to you, but you have the option over the next 1, 2, 3 years to go and get bank financing and close on your option, and then you take title to the house and it's yours, right? And so really powerful way for, again, somebody that might have fallen on those hard times or is just in transition and experience, whatever those circumstances were, but want the ability to say, hey, you know what, I have some level of ownership in this house.
Yeah, which is great too, because then if they want to do a little fix-ups, they want to, nothing too major, and I put in the lease they can't paint any walls black, because they may not, end up purchasing it, so I don't want to have them start an addition and then, I'm left with whatever's going on. So you have to kind of say, hey, this is your house, treat it like it's your own, but with certain parameters. Yeah. I had a guy paint a back room completely black, and it took like 5 layers of paint to get rid of that black before it stopped showing through. Yeah. It was so bad. So no, that is great. It really helps people out. And I think I used to do a couple lease options in the spring and a couple in the fall. And so by doing that, I was either buying, selling, renting, or closing at one time or another, either in the spring or the fall. Mm-hmm. And then some they don't end up able to buy. And so then you move them out, and then you bring somebody else in to do another lease option. I've collected a lot of names just by putting a sign out in front of a property that says lease to own your next home or rent to own your next home. Mm-hmm. It gets a lot of curiosity. People are like, yeah, I want to buy a house. How does this work? And it helps a lot of people out.
Well, and you've created that win-win-win situation, right? You've acquired the home, you have it in your control, and now you're saying, I'm okay with selling it and handing that title off to somebody else, but I'm okay with it being in any time in this 3-year period, or whatever that period is of somebody having the option to close it. So yeah. I love it.
Yeah, I do too.
So why is it a win for you as you execute these lease option agreements? Like what excites you about putting a lease option in place, and how does that conversation go?
So I like lease options. It's kind of, I guess I shouldn't say inflation proof or economy proof. We all know that the economy's changed here in the last year and a half. And so sometimes you may have a tough time selling a property. Sometimes you might have your money wrapped up into a property and you were going to fix and flip it, but now you can't sell it. So a lease option is a great way to be able to recapture some of your cash and also rent it at the top of the market. Now let me explain that just a little bit. So the option money is their opportunity. They pay an option fee for the opportunity to buy a property in a later date, either a year or 2 years. I try not to go any more than 3 years. I usually do a year to 2 with the ability to be able to extend another year. But if they can't buy it at the end of that 3 years, if that's we've done to extend, then I end up, hey, it's not going to work out. We move them out, and then somebody else moves in. The cool thing is though, and it's a good thing for the investor, is that option money is non-refundable. So if you get 5 or 10 or 15, I've even gotten up as high as $30,000 for an option, that money's non-refundable. So that really ties them in that they want to close on that property. So then they, holy cow, I didn't silence my phone. That tells you right there, we are awesome. All right, so anyways, lost my train of thought. So you get that option money, it's non-refundable. They put that money down. Well, it's really not a down payment. You can't call it a down payment. There's some verbiage that you got to use when you're doing these contracts that'll get you in trouble. If you call it a down payment, now they've just bought equity in that home. They've got equitable interest in that home, and you don't want to give that to the leasee or the tenant. So you got to separate those two contracts out. One's an option agreement, and then one's a lease. So you treat them just like a regular tenant, but they have the option to buy it at a future date.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I love, what this does for a buyer and seller alike is, when we go in and buy a house, let's call it a $300,000 house. In order for me to buy it, it's $300,000. But if I have to move next year and I have to sell it, I'm expecting at least 10% in cost to be able to dispose of the property. And dispose is to say, hey, you know what? This isn't lasting the 30 years that I thought it was going to, so that I could gain the appreciation and I could pay down the mortgage and I could, do all of those things that happen over a period of decades in paying on a home. And so for a buyer or a lease option they are able to opt into the idea of, hey, you know what, I have secured this home, I have the ability to close on it at any time, but you know what, instead of me being able to stay in Idaho for the decade that I hoped to, I'm now moving to Florida, or I'm moving to Texas, or I'm moving to Washington State, whatever that place is that they're going next. They've bought themselves a year or two or thereabouts to say, I have the ability to close it. And if it's a $300,000 home, it's going to cost them $30,000 to sell that home a year or two from now anyways. And so that option fee really isn't going to waste, because if they would have bought the home day one, they still have to pay 6% realtor fees, 2% in closing costs, and 2% to at least to fix up the home so that it's ready for retail sale.
Yeah.
And
I love that perspective. Yeah.
And that's all we're trying to do is create that win-win situation is, you know what, you have the ability to pay on this house, you have the ability to, own it, but you're not out anything that you wouldn't have been otherwise if you would have just bought the home. We have those costs on the tail end of having to sell the home anyways.
Yeah, I love that. And then you brought up another idea of if so let's say you move to town and you buy a house, you buy it outright, and then 6 months later you decide you've got to leave, you've got to move, and so you have all that money wrapped into that property. Lease option may be good for you to do, so you can spread your time out over about 3 years, so you can recapture a little bit of equity, you can recapture some of those costs that you occurred by down payment and whatever else. I love that perspective also. And then what I love about it too is it's a good way to get the most bang for your buck, I guess I should say. Not only are you getting option money, but also you can rent it at the top of the market. So a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, if you average rents are, let's say 15 to 2,000, you can get the 2,000 all day long. You don't have to, put it out there as a lower payment, because people are willing to pay more because they have the option to purchase it and they feel like this is going to be my home in 2 years or a year, which turns out great.
Yeah. And when I've approached these lease option agreements is the more they put down, the more committed they are to closing on the home in that 1 to 3 year time frame, the less that rent will be. Right?
Yes.
But if they only give me $5,000 as I'm going to buy the home from you at any point in the next 36 months, then that rent definitely peaks at the height of that market.
Yeah.
And so it's a give and take, right? It's my price, your terms, my price.
Yeah.
And it just comes down to a little bit of negotiation and being comfortable with, here are my terms, and this is what allows for you to secure the property and, for you to be happy as, being a future owner of this house.
And one of the things we used to do quite a bit is because we lease option to people that had really bad credit, like their credit's just trashed. And they're good people, they got a good job. We call the references, make sure they are working, make sure they do have a good job, make sure they have a little bit of history of something. I mean, even if somebody's got trash credit, I'll rent to them if they got a good solid job and they've had it for 2 or 3 years, because there's a lot of things that happen. But if somebody doesn't have a job or a good solid job, man, that's really tough to rely to make sure they're going to make that payment. But what that does is they rent, they pay you, their most important payment of the week or of the month. Hopefully, it's their most important. A lot of people keep their cell phones going before they, they'll let their house go before they let their cell phone go, which is kind of crazy. But they're committed. They put the lease option money or the option money down. They've signed the rental agreement. And so what I've done for some is I'm like, look, out of the option money that you're giving me, I'm going to go pay for credit repair for you. And somebody told me one day, it's like, man, that's crazy. Why would you do that? I was like, because my strategy as owning the home is for them to buy it. I don't want it anymore. I want to sell the property, maybe for whatever reason. And so what I got tired of is getting at the end of the year or the 2 years, and the people I did the option with are like, oh man, I haven't worked on my credit at all. And I'm like, well, you still can't buy. And so then I'm like, well, let's extend it, another year. And then I find out they still haven't done anything about it. So then I have to evict them or, not evict, but say their lease is up and boot them out, and I keep their option money. And I didn't feel good about that. And I'm like, okay, I set this up. I want them to purchase this. So I put in their contract, in their option contract, that a portion of that money is going to go for credit repair. And part of the terms is they have to show up. They have to work on the credit. The people that I hook them up with, which is a company down in California, I call in with them and say, hey, how are they doing? They're doing great. They're doing the different things. So as long as they're working on what they're doing, then the option's still valid. If at any time they my guys down there in California say, hey, this guy's he's not doing what he said he's going to do. He's not even coming to his appointments. Then I'm going to call and say, hey, if you don't start treating this seriously, then you're going to lose that option money, and I'm going to have to move you out. And I'll tell you what, once we started doing that, my close ratio went to about 90% of people I did lease options with were buying the properties. Before that, I was like 50%.
Wow.
And sometimes I don't mind. Sometimes I don't mind. I'm like, yeah, I'll keep your option money. I'll put somebody else in. I'll get more option money. I've had one that I've held on for 15 years, and I've done a lease option with them with different people. In 2 years, it's up, and they don't exercise their option because they can't, and I move somebody else in. So that's been actually a huge cash flow property for me because I get the monthly rents plus I get the option money.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I want people to be able to close on it.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Huh. Well, that's really interesting. I like how you treated that too. We're taking care of people here, and this is their lifestyle, right? They're moving into a home, and they want it to become a part of their family, right?
Yeah.
This is the single largest financial decision that a lot of people will make in their entire lifetime, and helping them through that process. You want to be the guy that's up front, and here are the plans. And I love that credit repair option. And I appreciate that perspective, because now you've done something not just to help somebody get into a home, not just to get you a sale, but now you've put somebody back on their feet for all the other reasons that it's good to have positive credit.
Yeah,
And,
definitely. And here's the thing I realized too: people that have a family that want to move into a home, they don't want to rent, they don't want to move into an apartment, is they want to put down some roots. And with a lease option, they can do that. They can work on their credit. They can figure out whatever's going on. They can get their job history under, because their kids are going to start school. They're going to start going to church in whatever area they're in. They're going to start becoming friends with people. And moving is tough. Not only is it tough on the mom and dad, it's tough on the kids. Mm-hmm. And the least amount of moving you can do, the better I feel like it is for most families. So if you can help a family get in there and get established and create a win for them, and they could put roots down with an elementary school and a junior high and with friends and with the church they're going to, then that's a huge win for them.
Yeah.
Because even if they do go rent and nobody wants, then they have to move again. And now they've been there for 2 years, they got the job history, now they're gonna start looking for another property. And you always hear, hey, do you know of any houses for sale in the area? Mm-hmm. We don't wanna pull our kids out of school, we don't wanna stop going to the same church, we became friends with people. Mm-hmm. And so we wanna establish. And so I think that's a really good win for most people if they have some bad credit or a job challenge or they don't have enough job history, is to be able to put some roots down in a nice place, in a nice home. Most of the time we've remodeled them at some time. We've painted, we've put carpet in, we've put new appliances in. Not all the time, but a lot of times we do. And it just helps people out. Funny story. You ready for a funny story?
I'm ready.
So when the economy was going crazy back in 2006 and 7 and 8, I did a few lease options, and I couldn't believe how much those properties had appreciated. And so one of them, I told them I'd sell it to them for 140, but it would appraise for 180. And they gave me $10,000 down. And I said, okay, you're at the end of 2 years, you're gonna probably getting ready to close on this. I'll give you 10 grand if you don't close. And one of them was like, what? Why would you do that? So he's smart, he would start looking, he's like, I know why he wants to do that, because this property is worth $40,000 more than what he said he'd sell it to me for in 2 years, which the 2 years is almost up. So one of them, they did it. They're like, oh, I'll take the 10 grand. And they took off. The other one's like, nope, we're closing. I'm going to do whatever I can to close. But what was great is I was able to buy him out of his option. I was able to throw it on the market, and I was able not only, because I was going to make about $30,000 if he exercised his option, but the appreciation happened so fast in that 2 years, and I think it was between 2007 and 08, or 06 to 08, I can't remember, that, man, it was worth 10 grand to me to give it to him and then turn around and sell it, because I made another, $30,000, which was awesome.
Well, and that option is just such a powerful strategy. And, another example of this is, you go in and you have these condos and these apartments that are being built, and people can go in and put an option and say, here's $1,000 or here's $5,000 for me to be able to come and buy this house 6 months from now when this building is complete. And our next episode, we're going to be talking about Roth IRAs. And I'm going to explain to you, a 1,500% rate of return that somebody experienced by putting an option down on a property, saying, I want to close on this in 6 months, and how they gained a 1,500% return because of them securing that option in a property.
That's awesome. And they did that. They took the money from a retirement account.
They did. They took it from a Roth IRA. So we'll be talking about that in the next episode. But
I think that's it for us right now, right?
There's a summary of lease options, and what a cool strategy for the buyers, the sellers, and the tenants alike.
Yeah, it's a great option. All right.
All right.
Thanks. Tune in next time.